right on schedule. Apple dropped iOS 26.1 Beta 2, and we have waited 2 weeks for this as expected. Now, what's interesting is when we jump into the build number here, we may be in store for a weekly release already come next week thanks to this build number. We'll talk about all that in a minute, but first things first, let's actually talk about the heat check here for the second beta on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Because if you follow the channel, you know we talked about this in the first video where the temperature actually was significantly better than what we were experiencing on our 16 Pro Max over the 17 here. And as you can see right near the center of the device and actually all the way around the 17 Pro Max, we are hovering around 96 to 97 degrees, with the camera plateau being the only place that hits over 100. Still a huge improvement over last gen, but I will say it is definitely a little warmer to the touch than what we'd like to see, but it's okay. Definitely a huge improvement. Now, this build right here for beta 2 of iOS 26.1 did come in right under 2 gigs, so I am not actually expecting a lot of new features here, unfortunately. Hopefully they still will be coming in a third beta, but yeah, still somewhat surprising. As you can see here though, we now have an E build, which is definitely an improvement from the first beta with a full build number of 23B505-9E. This signifies a couple things here, and again, being that it's an E build, hopefully we actually will be on a weekly release cycle sooner than later. But one thing I can tell you, kind of scrolling around and doing our typical song and dance, everything is so smooth still for a second beta. It was like this even on the first beta, so I was happy to see that. But before we get too excited, let's actually run some Geekbench scores once the phone cools down. But first things first, let's talk about the history on this. And as you can see, just a couple of days ago, we ran this again, and we did get a 3720 single core score, and a 9417 multi-core score. Once the phone finishes indexing, we'll wait a few minutes, we'll run this again, so hopefully not to get any skewed numbers. But if you are a numbers person, this is what you can kind of expect to see with that first beta of iOS 26. Now, also, I do want to call out one thing as far as what's new here. Apple did update the developer website for October 6 releases, and when you actually scroll down to iOS 26.1 Beta 2 and go to the release notes, well, as you can see here, it is still pretty generic and seems to be from Beta 1. Nothing new seems to be included here, and everything's still the same. Just a few issues, and if it is updated, I apologize if I don't recognize it, but you can see everything right here as well. Some known issues, some resolved issues, but nothing crazy. Siri has some known issues about questions related to news in Portuguese. Siri voice preview might default to legacy PT. Look at it's activating. UI kit. But that's it. It's still a very small list, which is somewhat surprising again for a .1 release. Just kind of surprising here. What we do hope to see more of though in this build is more bug fixes and under the hood improvements for camera issues that kind of plague the devices, Wi-Fi bugs, and anything else that we weren't aware of. Comment down below what you guys might have found. Now, while we let this finishing indexing, we'll go back into settings really quick because I do want to talk one more time again about our iPhone storage, since it does seem to yet again be hugely improved with system data and nowhere near what our 16 Pro Max was getting impacted by. It is still over 23.57 gigs, which is not tiny by any means. And then iOS is now over 21 gigs because, as you can see here, iOS actually jumped up a little bit, and so did Apple Intelligence. So hopping around into these settings specifically for Apple Intelligence, you can see exactly why that could be. If you jump into voices, everything still looks the same here, but it could do some more additions to live translations that was actually brought into the fold with Beta 1. If you did miss what was new in iOS 26.1 Beta 1, it did bring some changes to the dialer itself in the phone app. It now uses more of a liquid glass design. In the Photos app, also in the prior build, let me go ahead and open this up and go to a video really quick. It actually did include a new slider color and animation, as you can see here. It is now a little bit more gray than what it was in the past. And then also in the calendar app, background colors for events are shown full width. One other change in actually the music app, and this is very cool. On the bottom down here, you are able to scroll to different songs right here in that little scrubber bar showing you what's playing. I think that is an awesome new addition here, especially if you use the Apple Music app a lot. That is definitely a nice little tweak. But aside from that, there was really not a ton of other stuff new here. So let's go ahead now and go back into Geekbench and run this test to see what scores we actually get from beta 2. Okay, so Geekbench just finished running, and you can see we now have a single core score of 3620 and a multi-core score of 9332. If you did want to see that comparison again, you can see it's just slightly down from the 3720 single, and it is a little bit, it is down a little bit as well on the multi-core score for 9417. Nothing crazy, and that's good to see there wasn't a lot of fluctuation between these betas. Now, there was some other information found that did hint, and this is huge, even though I know a lot of people might not care since they have Apple Watches, but there was hints in the code found that Apple could be working on third-party smartwatch support, which will be huge depending on how limited it makes it. Obviously, Android or Google Wear does work with iPhones, but it is so minimal as far as what you can do. It's really hard to say or recommend you buy one over an Apple Watch for obvious reasons. Now, let's talk about this release schedule. So, today is obviously Monday, October 6th. It's been 2 weeks since the 29th when we received the first beta, and traditionally you would think we might not get another one until the 20th. But since this is an e-build, it is possible next week, not on the 13th, but possibly the 14th, since the 13th is a holiday here in the US, we do receive another beta, that it is closer to regular release at the end of October, especially if it's going to correlate with new Macs and new iPads that are rumored to be announced this month. So, very curious to see. Very possible it'll still be 2 weeks. Apple does Apple things all the time. If you guys follow along for a while, you'll know that. So, something to be aware of and something to keep an eye out for the next couple of weeks. But beyond that, again, nothing new really found here, unfortunately. It looks like .1 is not going to be a huge new feature release, but more bug fixes and behind-the-scenes improvements, specifically for the new iPhone 17 series devices, and new live translations for the Apple Watch and the, I should say, AirPods Pro 3. So, thanks for watching, guys. That's it for this one. We will follow up as we do midweek to let you know how the performance is, battery life, because obviously everyone wants to know about that first thing, and if you should install this on your primary device. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.